Hi, everyone. This is Achuta Baba from Nightlight Astrology. It is Wednesday, February 12th, and I'm checking in with a little update on what the moon is up to right now and a couple of transits that are developing over the next week that we can kind of start anticipating right now. So let's dive in. Here's the chart on the screen so you all can see it. And what I'm taking a look at right now are the transits of, put my hand on it. Let's first start with the moon, actually. So here's the moon, and currently moving through the sign of Libra. Some interesting transits are, the moon is in its waning trine. And a waning trine is also called a disseminating trine, usually indicates a period of starting to, it's like as you go up over the hump of the full moon, you're starting to roll down the hill and you're gaining momentum. And there's this, I would liken this to the process of writing a book when the book starts going out into the world after the entire publication process has happened and the launch has happened, maybe under the full moon. And now you're starting to see, say, the book you publish go out into the world, and you're starting to get, invites to podcasts or, that kind of thing. So disseminating trines mean that something is in a state of moving out into the world and starting to shed skin. Like you are getting to the place where things can begin to be integrated, finished, completed, distributed, shared, put out into the world. And then immediately after we get into like the last quarter stage of the moon, which we're a little ways away from yet, that's when you start typically seeing the beginning of the end of something. Anyway, so kind of a disseminating moment in the moon cycle. And the way that I apply that to my own life is to think, right now, what am I in the process of sort of finishing, finalizing? Where's resolution? Where do things need resolving? And generally a little bit of pressure in that direction is a good idea. So like right now, I'm finishing up all of the reward readings and recordings and things like that I did for my Kickstarter. And I'll probably end up finishing that over the weekend. So right after that, the last quarter moon comes through. I'm guessing by the time the moon's in Sagittarius, I'll probably be done. So, in my own personal life, I look at that waning moon and I go, okay, it's dissemination time. Looking at the moon's dignity, the other thing that's really important is always take a look at the moon's dignity, right? And the moon in Libra primarily is the domicile or the home of Venus. Venus in a little bit more of a challenging position, more of the kind of tension that Venus feels with Mars in the sign of Aries right now. This could mean that part of the resolution that I'm seeking, part of the closure completion process that I'm going through with the moon opposite its own host, Venus, who's in a Mars ruled sign, could involve some element of conflict or challenge or tension or stress within relationships. So I just note that as a kind of background presence, or it could involve themes that fit the Venus-Mars dynamic and maybe with a little bit more tension or stress in general because of the opposition, which could include things like, say, women and feminism and female athletes, or just I'm making some Venus and Mars things up. There's lots of them, but let's just say that there was something that some combination of Venus and Mars is appearing right now in some amount of tension and stress as I'm moving toward this place of completion. You can think about that, like, and you can oftentimes see it in your life in really silly kind of like basic ways. Like, for example, I'd made a joke about this on my Facebook page today that, I knew Venus had entered Aries because the Indigo Girls started being played. I started that my house started to be filled with the sound of the Indigo Girls, and I have a wife and two daughters, so it's like I'm already outnumbered. But then you've got the Indigo Girls going full, like full on. So I was really like, wow, this is so Venus and Aries. Venus is entering Aries, and like, girl power was amping up in my house, and not in a bad way at all. My wife then decided to plan a trip with some friends to go see the Indigo Girls at an outside venue with our little girls, like later on. And so it was kind of like, this, like, just sometimes you can just feel the appearance of a planet and its combination in very basic ways, sometimes, more intense or whatever. But At any rate, uh, as the moon is completing its disseminating trine phase, some tension with Venus and Aries, just to note, the moon's opposite its dispositor. Now, this is happening over the next, say, day and a half or two. And as this happens, the moon is also going to go through a bunch of aspects to Jupiter, to Pluto, to Saturn. This lineup is pretty interesting. And for example, right now, one of the things happening in the news in the US that reflects this is the president being involved in the sentencing outlines or procedure of Roger Stone. Now, I won't explain all the details, and I don't care about the details for the sake of this talk at all. All I'm saying is that some issue about justice, fairness, ethics, equality, and anything involving like legal proceedings, and for there to be some stress or tension around those things right now. That's just a simple example in the news. There's plenty of them. There's never any shortage of these kinds of examples in the news. But you may notice that over the next 24 hours, as the moon goes through the squares to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, that there is also, the moon is overcoming these planets. That's an important detail that I should mention first, meaning it's in the superior position. It's going to get struck by a ray from Saturn, which can kind of wound it, but then the moon will overcome. Typically, this means moon and Libra kinds of concerns should take the day. Fairness, beauty, balance, symmetry, rationality, the idea of something being balanced, intelligent. So those kinds of concerns should prevail, but they may go through some, twists and turns from somewhat, debilitated Jupiter, which might have an idea of morality, justice, or truth that we don't agree with, or that is really conservative or overly rigid in some way that we're contending with when it comes to, you could be approaching someone and dealing with someone who's not seeing things equally or fairly. Pluto square to, or the moon square to Pluto can mean deeper, more intense, cathartic events emotionally, especially around issues of fairness, balance, harmony. And then Saturn, of course, which can be deeper, harder lessons and starker, more sobering realities that we come to face. But the moon, the more caring, sensitive, nurturing moon, is in the superior position and therefore should exert some dominance over these themes. And we should come away in the next couple of days here feeling like, at least there was an opportunity for some degree of negotiation, balance, resolution, compromise, a fair outcome of some kind. So, so personally, when I look at this, right, I can think of lots of small ways in which these energies are playing out in my own life. For example, negotiating something with someone I'm hiring right now, negotiating with a few different people that I have to hire to help me with different things this year, and thinking through how I want to do those things. Trying to come up with the fairest, most balanced way of handling different things in business, and those things happening to be really acute right now. And I'm trying to sort of wrap those things up, come to some resolution with those things. That's the disseminating trine. So anyway, I'm giving my own example, but you could probably see it fitting a number of different ways in your own life. Let's take a look at a few other things that are happening right now. Next big event, in my opinion, really interesting. I mean, there's a couple of them, but I'm really fascinated by Mars about to enter its exaltation. This is going to happen, I think it's on the 16th. Yeah, it's right on the 16th. So just about 4 days away from now, at the end of the week, you'll see the dignity change of Mars growing. And the reason this is important is because Mars is going from being in the sign of Jupiter and then reliant upon, like a house guest in Jupiter's house. And whereas Jupiter depressed in Capricorn, typically what that means is that, you have a Mars that's not being served the best things right now. For example, when Mars and Jupiter were in that Antitia, we saw a very famous athlete's downfall. So Jupiter's serving Mars. And that dignity exchange can be rough in a lot of different ways. But when Mars changes signs, then all of a sudden Mars is free to act and behave in a way that's a lot more easy and natural for Mars. And you're getting it with Saturn in the same sign as Saturn, which actually means that Mars and Saturn should come together to really accelerate like the good qualities of Mars Saturn, which mean hard work, discipline, working hard under pressure, delivering results, mature and effective, competitive, athletic, but serious, capable, and responsible. You get those feelings coming in. And right as Mars enters, I mentioned this at the beginning of the month in my overview video, but Mars will also hit a trine to Uranus, which should mean that it's kind of electric and fast, and represents some kind of breakthrough that's happening faster than we might have expected. But it will come along with this kind of disciplined hard work that Mars and Saturn generally implies. And that's very close at hand. That's like four or 5 days away. So a lot to look forward to as we I think we're turning a big chapter in the momentum of the month. And that feeling of will being frustrated, or feeling like the Mars energy in the air right now kind of maybe feeling a little heavy or arduous, or even lacking faith in something that we're doing, or struggling to find some meaningful understanding of why we're going through something that we're going through. I think all of that has the potential to turn around significantly, and we can at least feel that what we're doing is productive and taking us somewhere a bit more than when Jupiter was serving Mars from Sagittarius. Now Mars is serving Mars, and Saturn is helping serve Mars. And that means I really think we can get some stuff done. So it's a natural year with Jupiter in its fall to be kind of questioning where we're at with things. Just why, if you look at on any given day when Jupiter's in Capricorn, you could have a little mini crisis of faith. And also, it's not uncommon when Jupiter's in Capricorn to need to start from the very beginning of something, like start at the ground up and find our faith in a process of hard work, and sometimes to recover some sense of lost dignity, morality, some sense of purpose that is being rebuilt this year. And it's a slow process, especially Saturn and Pluto, which are long and slow in the way that they change us and purge us and so forth. It's a deeper kind of grandmother, grandfather energy with Saturn and Pluto. And really, it's like, when I lived with my grandpa, I lived next door to my grandpa for a number of years when I was in graduate school, and I was writing a book. And there was this day where he really wanted me to help him, which was actually like every other day. He would just show up sometimes in his truck with like chainsaws in the back and be like, all right, let's go. And he owned about 80 acres of land in Michigan. And so, I would like go out and try to help him. But I'm such a academic and artistic type of person. So, I mean, I was happy to help when I could, but there came this one day when, it was just under the sweltering sun, and my grandpa was as off as he often did, just sitting on his tractor, watching me work like under the hot sun and just supervising. And so anyway, my grandpa's doing that, and I just stop, and he can tell that I'm really exhausted, and he just looks at me and this is such an old timer Saturn Pluto thing to say. He said, builds character. Like, I just and it was a moment that I'll never forget, because I basically wanted to kill him, you know what I mean? But I was like, love my grandpa, I'm happy to work for him. But it was just the blistering heat of the day. I had work that I needed to do, and he was just sitting up there like a dark Saturnine overlord, just being like, work, young man, which my dad got a lot worse than I did when he was growing up. My grandpa was quite a taskmaster, war vet and all that kind of stuff. He was a boxer. He was an intense guy. Anyway, so Saturn and Pluto can feel like that, where it feels like that there is, even within ourselves, it might not be, it could be in the world around us, in the environment, someone or something, even ourselves, kind of standing over us with the whatever, the overlord, the overlord stick, standing there being like, listen, you will do hard and serious and deep and painful and transformative work until I say stop. and I haven't said stop. Like, that's how, and I'm getting this, of course, because it's opposing my sun right now, which is, all kinds of bananas. But I'm learning a lot and actually loving it. I think I'm becoming, I mean, if I had to reflect just briefly on, sorry, I'm going all over the place today. If I had to reflect just briefly on like what I've learned from the sun, getting an opposition from Saturn and Pluto in my chart, I would be like, I would have anticipated a lot of different things happening, and some of them have already come true and, like textbook. But if I had to say one thing that was really, really deep, it would be the ways in which I've been growing as a person through things I'm learning about being a dad. Such a sun thing, right? Sun and Cancer, I guess, too. But, and it's just this, but it does feel like there's this pressure, in my own chart, feeling it really personally. But Saturn and Pluto place this pressure on us, and they're like, you're going to transform, but it's going to take, you clearing out a 100-year-old patch of rocks with a with a shovel. So anyway, and for other people, I've noticed that it doesn't have the same long suffering, long working feeling to it. It has, for other people, it's been much more cathartic and rapid, and I get that. But a lot of people that I've been working with, obviously, I see clients every day. It's the slow burn with Saturn, Pluto, sometimes punctuated by dramatic events. But anyway, so we've been dealing with that for a while. What else is happening right now? Let's get back up to date here. So Mercury is all too close to Neptune and moving into a conjunction. Well, not a conjunction, excuse me, moving to station and turn retrograde. I believe it's the 17th. Let's just check that really quick. Yeah, so stationing into the 17th, turning retrograde 17th, 18th. This is a, debilitated Mercury, but does have reception to Jupiter, and Jupiter is going to have both the exaltation lord and Saturn present. What I would take that to mean is that this Mercury retrograde, while it could do its typical damage, right? Any Mercury retrograde can bring on, delays, reversals of fortune that are kind of difficult and frustrating to deal with, whether it's something with a car or a computer or a cell phone or your travel plans or just details or information or communications with other people. I would imagine that this could get a little foggy. Miscommunication, misperception, deception, gossip, etc. could be an issue with Mercury pretty close to Neptune, and some delays, maybe issues around water as well. But then I am happy that Jupiter has reception. What is reception, by the way, in case you don't know what that term is? Reception means that Mercury has an aspect, whole sign aspect, and in this case, degree-based aspect to Jupiter, its host. So Mercury is in Jupiter's sign and it has an aspect to Jupiter. That means the host can more effectively serve its guest. And Jupiter, so the reason that I'm kind of pausing is like, Jupiter's in its fall. It's not so different from, Mars being served by Jupiter when Mars was in Sagittarius. It's like Jupiter can't deliver the best of Jupiter right now. It's got to deliver, kind of epic Jupiterian failures. So, at least in part. Sorry. Anyway. So, but I'm encouraged about the fact that Mars and Saturn are there because that is the exaltation lord and that is the domicile ruler. In both cases, Jupiter's pretty well fortified right now, in other words. And I would imagine that what this means is that even though there can be Mercury meltdowns that might be a little bit more epic because of a fallen Jupiter, we do ultimately have this kind of really intense work, sobering, practical, efficient, and productive Mars-Saturn energy that's in the air behind Jupiter. So I think we get through it okay. We might have to suddenly push we may find that there is a sudden pressure that comes on that's unexpected, that comes out of the blue through this Mercury retrograde that suddenly we have to deal with. It also wouldn't surprise me, for example, with Mercury, for example, retrograde near Neptune in its fall, that there is more of the proliferation of, say, the coronavirus. Mercury and Neptune are, notorious for things that spread, that porous, lack of boundaries, things that affect the immune system. So it could be that there is some more, some greater proliferation of that virus that's going around. But I would think with Jupiter kind of contained by Mars and Saturn, that there would be some effort to contain it that would ramp up. That's a real possibility with this, and I think it would go well because of that kind of containment from Saturn and Mars that Jupiter has. So that's a simple example, but you could see that playing out in your own life probably in some interesting ways if you play around with the symbolism. Those are the big things that I have on the map coming up in the next week. Mars's change of dignity, Mercury's turning retrograde, winding down to a new moon in Pisces, and the Mars trine Uranus dynamic, but more productive. So I think there's some really interesting astrology coming up in the next week. I'll certainly have my eye on and probably do some more updates as we go. So thanks everybody for listening. I hope that you got something good out of this. And tell me your comments and stories below. How are you seeing the transits show up in your life? I'm always interested to hear. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. Take it easy. Bye.